This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
It's Thursday, January 19th. Jesperson here with Hicks on Real Talk. I just put out a Twitter poll, an unofficial, unscientific Twitter poll a couple of minutes ago, Johnny, and I'm curious to know where you're going to land on this. I on purpose did not ask you about it. I don't want to know ahead of time before we start recording the show where you stand on this, and so I will now ask you on the record.
Wow, put me on the spot.
John Hicks, are you still wishing people a Happy New Year?
I think that's okay, but I think after this weekend, I think 3 weeks is enough.
All right, it's I've posted on my personal Twitter. Give me a follow there at Ryan Jesperson. It's January 19th. Are you still wishing people a Happy New Year? So far, 116 votes. The poll is in its infancy.
I'm in the minority.
An overwhelming 73% say it's time to move on. But get this, in an interesting development, and we'll ask our lead-off guest, Amir, about this in just a moment. Leading in second place, the vote option, I never do, as opposed to yes. So in third place, for sure, people are still wishing a Happy New Year at just 12%, a measly and meager 12%. That's me, by the way.
Never do. Okay, Grump.
These are probably the people that don't make New Year's resolutions. They don't want to go on the record with things they're going to change about their life or things that they would like to alter in the next 12 months every time January hits. So we go straight in. Should we blaze in hot to Amir? You know him. He's the host, the wildly popular host of This is VANCOLOUR on CHEK. He is an adored and beloved social media personality, and the statistics show that he is the most bleeped political host in the entire province of British Columbia. Mo, welcome back to the show. It's great to see your face, pal. Hey, we have you on mute. I think it's because we were afraid that you were going to come out of here guns blazing, F bombs. We had you bleep.
You know, on FM radio, AM radio, my own show on television, I've definitely been bleeped multiple times, but the internet is the Wild West, right? You can say whatever you want. And you don't have to worry about censorship, as it were.
I was going to say, no member of this audience is going to be that impressed that you're bleeped all the time. They don't want to hear the bleeps. Hey, are you a Happy New Year guy? You wishing people a Happy New Year all the time? Are you still doing it here on January 19th,
yeah.
3 weeks in?
Oh, yeah. I think if it's the first time you've seen someone in 2023 in January, you can still say Happy New Year. That's the rule that I live by.
I agree. And when would you start? Like, when's the absolute cutoff? Is it Valentine's Day? Like, if we're going to get really deep into the year?
I would say February 1st, but I would also say on a case-by-case basis. Like, if I see you January 5th and I say Happy New Year, and then I see you the next week, it would be weird for me to say Happy New Year to you again because I've already seen you.
You're going to keep track of this type of thing, though?
I try to as best as I can, you know. We're all doing our best.
Are you ever the guy that's like when you see somebody and or you know a friend will make a mutual friend makes an introduction and says I'd like you to meet person X, and then you say it's nice to meet you, and then you get that half a second where they give you that kind of a bit of a stink eye, and you know what's coming next, and they say we've met before. You ever get that?
Oh yeah, no, that's happened to me all the time, and it does. And I've been on both ends of that exchange. And I think the best thing is not to dwell on it. Don't think about it too much.
I've actually altered my my vernacular, so to speak. I changed several years ago.
What do you say?
I made a conscious change. I literally never ever say nice to meet you. It will never come out of my mouth. I only ever say nice to see you, because nice to see you fits if you're seeing someone again. Nice to see you is not a weird thing to say if you're meeting someone. And so it's now nice to see you 100% of the time.
I like that strategy. You know, I look forward to the day where we can normalize saying it's a burden to meet you.
I'm told it's supposed to be nice to meet you, but I'm not experiencing that feeling right now, we may say. Yeah. Hey, are you?
I wish it was.
You in your household or in your tight circle, in your sphere, are you and your loved ones inclined to make New Year's resolutions?
Yes, I pretty much run like 50-50 on them historically, but I do love New Year's resolutions. We do have some New Year's resolutions between myself and my girlfriend. And so it's been going pretty strong. I think January 19th today is Quitter's Day. That's when most people quit on their resolutions. But we're still going strong, and hopefully the viewers and the listeners are as well.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to be producer of this show, John Hicks, sitting here, and as we speak, I looked over and had to, just for a quick second, did a bit of a double take. I think it was a protein shake that you were vigorously shaking.
Yeah, this morning I did the old forgot to put the cap on lock and got it all down my shirt and had to totally change before I came to work. How's yours going?
Well, it's we're not here to talk about me, John, and so
that explains it all.
So it's Quitter's Day, but you're still on the wagon, Johnny.
I'm going. I worked out yesterday and the day before and the day before.
Well, you just bought new gym equipment, so you have no choice. What is your New Year's resolution, Mo?
My New Year's resolution, and I tend to focus on process, but here's the thing. I put on about 40 pounds during the pandemic, and I don't have any more excuses. I really got to get fit and eat healthy and get back on track to where I was pre-pandemic. And so, yes, I've kind of put that number out there, 40 pounds, but I'm more focused on doing something with regard to fitness every day, making sure I batch cook for the week, so I'm eating healthy throughout the week, and really focusing on those processes and having someone as in a partner to keep me accountable and to keep each other accountable. And so I'm not really like weighing myself every week or anything like that, but I'm making sure that those processes are there. And I'm happy to say that since coming back from vacation, I've gotten some fitness every day. I've been eating pretty healthy with, the weekly cheat meal as well. And it's been going good. And I think organization, writing things down, focusing on the processes and having someone that keeps you accountable are really the keys to any goals or achieving any goals.
So you and your girlfriend, Katie, you're on the same page on this one? Like she's your accountability partner, so to speak?
Yeah, I guess so. And I don't think she necessarily has a tangible goal in terms of what she wants to achieve, but I think she does also want to not eat out as much as we have been for the last year. She wants to get back into that regular fitness routine as well, which I think, we all have excuses in terms of work or just life in general, but I think both of us do want to get back on track and we're working towards that. So it's great. It's great when you can do it with someone.
Man, I'm with you. And I put on like at least 25 pounds during COVID. And it's like, it's one of those things where I'm like, it's kind of like, we're all like, ha ha ha. And everyone's like, yeah, it's a COVID. And everyone's like, but then you get to the point that I'm not like, I don't care if somebody's, overweight, underweight, all this kind of thing. We talk about it. And I know people's attitudes are different on it. And I just think as long as you feel good in your skin, as long as you answer to yourself, it's a complicated matter. We've been talking actually a lot about fat phobias and fat shaming on the show over the past couple of weeks and things like that. So it's a personal conversation. And I think the numbers game, when you start talking about this, again, that needs to be an individual type thing. I don't know about you though. I mean, for me, and we say real talk, so we'll keep it real. I'm at the stage right now, Mo, where honestly, I'll look in the mirror when I'm getting ready and I'm like, I just don't recognize this guy, and it's just getting to the point where it's like it's annoying me more than anything, and so I'm trying to use that to drive me and motivate me,
Let me tell you what, I mean, you might not believe this. People who are familiar with my show might not believe this, but it wasn't that long ago that I was modeling for yoga studios. Like I was in an ad campaign for a studio here in BC, and they had several locations. And, I was great at yoga. I was going twice a day in the morning and in the evening. And really COVID was the thing that broke up that routine because this studio shut down. And then even when they reopened, the showers weren't open. And it's been very humbling to get back into the practice, knowing what I could do, 5 years ago, but humbling myself and really starting as a beginner again and being patient and with myself and being gracious with myself to get back into the routine. And I think, again, like I said, it's not about what you can accomplish today, but it's about the time that you set aside and the focus you put on something and recognizing that consistency in whatever you pursue, in whatever sort of goal will eventually pay off. So in terms of not recognizing yourself, I mean, I've been feeling that on the yoga mat where I'm like, things that used to come easy, I'm nowhere close to being able to do.
Yeah. And you know what, though? I love what you're talking about, like the spirit of your comments. You talk to so many people, and I've heard people say this. I seem to be hearing it more and more frequently. People are saying, be gentle on yourself, be gracious with yourself, like the idea of self-grace. I think so many people, just as human beings, we can, in a number of different contexts, right? Whether it's like how we look or how we feel or how much money we make or how much money we owe or where we live or where we don't live. We can be so hard on ourselves. We just shit talk ourselves. You know what I mean? And I love that idea of self-grace.
And Ryan, I mean, you probably know this better than anyone being in this industry. This is and many industries for sure are surrounded by naysayers and doubt, and even people that you think are on your team telling you that you're not good enough or this isn't going to work. And then it can really weigh you down. And then when you find a team, and I'm privileged to say that I now have teams that we're all supporting each other, where it's all focused towards continued growth. And we are gentle, but still constructive, still critical, still ambitious. It completely changes the game, and you become more productive. You become more creative. You become happier. And so having grace with yourself, having grace with others, doesn't mean that you're lazy or you're not going to, try to achieve things or not be ambitious. It actually means you're enabling that productivity and that magic down the line.
Yeah, I love it. So you and Katie were down in one of my favorite parts of the world.
Yeah.
I was checking out your Instagram and things like that while you guys were vacationing on Maui, and you hit all the spots, the highway to Hana and Lahaina, and anybody that's been there knows. I almost don't even want to ask you how was Hawaii, because you're going to give us the same answer everybody does. It's perfect. But how was, first things first, you were down there like during the holiday season. How was your air travel experience? We talked to Tourism Minister Randy Boissonneau yesterday, and everybody has to acknowledge that it's been a nightmare, not just in Canada, obviously, but around the world these past few weeks.
It was bizarre. And so we were supposed to fly out on the 23rd, which was the day that BC had its second big snowstorm.
Yeah.
And so we didn't know what that snowstorm was going to look like on the 22nd. As soon as we were able to check in, suddenly our flight was canceled, right? And so we're like, okay, this is interesting. You can't get through to WestJet. You're getting no answers. You just see that it's canceled on the YVR site. And so we're scrambling, right? We're trying to figure out, okay, well, let's just book another flight because we'll get refunded from WestJet eventually. And we were able to book one a day earlier. And so we missed the snowstorm. We were very lucky, got there one day earlier, which is fantastic. Came back and it was fine. But yeah, the communication is an absolute mess. I had WestJet phone me and they said, hey, like we noticed that your flight is canceled. And I was in the middle, like it was in the morning and we were on our way to go snorkeling or something. And I said, yeah, well, I'm in transit. I don't have the information on me. And they go, oh, okay, well, is there any way you can pull it up? And I'm scratching my head. And I'm like, you're calling me. Like, how do you not have the information? Like, what? I don't understand. And then, you fill in even though they cancel a flight, like WestJet is the one that cancels it, but then you still have to fill out the refund page and the form to get your money back. And it's like, how is this not automated? Where if you cancel it, you automatically give me back the money for that leg of the trip or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so bizarre and so hard to navigate. And I'm not blaming, WestJet customer service. I feel like they're probably understaffed and under-resourced. But when you're a consumer on that end and you're just getting no answers, you literally, in one circumstance throughout the trip, I got an email saying, hey, and this was after they called me, hey, can you call us at this number? I call the number and the number goes, yeah, we're not accepting any phone calls.
Jeez.
And it's like, well, who sent out this automated message for me to call you then, right? Like, it's just so confusing and frustrating. But again, I think our attitude was like, we'll deal with it when we come back in terms of the refunds and all that stuff. Otherwise we were lucky. So.
Man, I've had.
Hey, Ryan, sorry to switch gears on you. So on the topic of New Year's resolutions, I have a New Year's goal, and I feel like you're the guy that can help me achieve.
Let's
this
go.
goal.
What is it?
I want to be in 2023. I want to sit on a political panel with Wyatt Sharp.
Oh,
because he's the guy, right? Like, I mean, in 15, 20 years, he's going to be like the premier broadcaster in the country, maybe the world, who knows?
He's
we follow each other on Twitter, and I just want to say, like, I want to be able to tell people, like, I sat on a political panel with that young man. And so I hope we can make that happen sometime.
I'm pulling up. I mean, we had Wyatt on the show just a short time ago. A couple of his appearances ago, he was on with not with, but he was in the same show of ours with former BC Premier Christy Clark. People can check out his Wyatt Sharp show on YouTube. The kid's 13. A kid. I mean, he is a kid. He's not. You know,
he is a kid. Like it sounds condescending, but he is a kid. Yeah, it's not like he's like 21 and you're like, look at that kid coming up in the business. Yeah. It's like, no, he literally is a kid. Like he's 13, he's astute, he's smart, he's motivated. Like the way that he works the phones, the way that he like the emails or DMs he'll send us privately. This guy does all of his own booking. He produces his own show. His hustle is unbelievable, and he's landing all these big fish. Like he'll be like, it's like, who are you? You know, who's coming up next week on the Wyatt Sharp show? This 13-year-old. He's like, the American ambassador to Canada, or like the premier of Ontario. You're like, geez, man, it's unbelievable. And so, like for me, I mean, I've only been in this game 5 years, so I'm looking, at someone like you, and I'm like, oh man, I want to be on that Ryan Jesperson level.
Oh, that's
and then I'm looking over to the side, and here's 13-year-old Wyatt Sharp just killing the game, and I'm going like, okay, this kid's going to eat all of our lunch in very short time.
I'm locking in. We're trying to lock all our sponsors in on like 15-year legacy deals, and so they don't all just leave us for the Wyatt Sharp show 3 years from now. So like typically, people have heard you. Obviously, you've been standalone on this show, and you've also appeared on our unofficial opposition panel with Erica Eiffel. And you guys are like an unbelievable 1-2 punch. I'm trying to think the dynamic of like you, Erica, and Wyatt might be a little much for Wyatt, but maybe I'm underestimating. Like, I don't know.
Well, and here's the thing. Like, I'm sure some people would be like, oh, you're on a panel with this 13-year-old Wyatt Sharp. Mo, maybe you should put on the kid gloves. And I'd look at them and say, no, Wyatt needs to put on the kid gloves for me. Like, I'm intimidated by his knowledge base and how good he is. So I think he can hang with whatever situation you throw us in. Four of us might be a little much, but at some point, I'd love to be able to chat with him.
Well, we'll make it happen, my man. I'll tell you, by the end of 2023, we'll make that happen, and I'll look forward to it. That'll be he's a remarkable kid. I'll make sure that we send him this link too, so he hears this praise, because encouragement goes. I don't care what somebody's doing. Whether it's their line of work or their individual pursuits or they're volunteering or what have you. Isn't it amazing when somebody just like offers you a compliment? It goes so far.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, obviously Wyatt's young, but how driven he is, how much he's learning, he is going to get naysayers and people saying, why are you doing this? Like, what's the point? Just keep going. Like if he just continues on this trajectory, it's going to be something like we've never seen in this country. Like, I don't know. I can't think of anyone that started broadcasting when they were 13 and political broadcasting to boot.
Yeah,
the runway he has is amazing.
We've got some, like group chats and things like that, some text messages going between some former colleagues or, current colleagues this morning. The Calgary Herald building, which was, an institution on Deerfoot Trail in North Calgary. It's where I started my media career, and I've got amazing memories of, I don't even know if people remember some of these names. This was, a while ago, late 90s, but like nationally syndicated columnist Catherine Ford. One of my first memories of that big red brick building, the Calgary Herald building, the National Post building. I remember, walking up to the water cooler, like the literal water cooler on one of my first days, and there's Catherine Ford, and she says to me, she turns to me in her signature style and says, "What's in your mug?" As she's, dropping some water into her coffee mug, and I look, she's got just a bit of a dram of whiskey in her mug. She's adding water, and I think of like James Miratek and Heath McCoy and Colette Derwaritz and like just all of the brilliant Gwendolyn Richards and like just all the wonderful journalists that I worked with in that shop, and they've just announced today that building's been for sale for a long time, and U-Haul just bought it, and so U-Haul just bought it. So and
no disrespect to U-Haul,
no disrespect to U-Haul. They provide a valuable service, I'm sure, but that's the optics of it sucking. And of course it represents what's happening. The Post Media papers, I'm not sure if you saw this, but a lot of them, 12 of their papers, they announced today they're taking them to all digital format. My parents are still like, and I love this when I go visit them, old school subscribers to the print edition, and we'll hit the espresso machine and pour a coffee and read the print edition of the paper. And it reiterates to me today. It's on my heart. It's on my mind today as you and I speak, that how much the industry is changing. And to bring it back to a guy like Wyatt, and to somebody, and to you, Mo, your TV show is on a TV station that's owned by employees. I mean, we are streaming independently. I mean, the industry is changing so much that 20 or 30 or 50 years ago, I mean, hell, 5 years ago, a 13-year-old that would one day have dreams of becoming a broadcaster and hosting a talk show would be at the beginning of a long journey, and we would invite them to move up to Fort St. John or Chetwynd or Grand Prairie,
right?
And, not even Grand Prairie, that's too big of a market, High Prairie, and cut their teeth at a radio station and mop the floors when they're done their shift, and now you just go out and hustle and make it happen yourself. And it's exciting, but it also has big picture implications on the corporate media side.
It's true. And all praise to Wyatt, and I'm so glad he's doing that. But you look at even my story, I had no broadcast, no journalism, no media experience whatsoever. I started this at 33. And now to be on primetime television in BC it still blows my mind. And I feel I feel full of gratitude and very privileged to be able to do so. But the reality is, obviously, this wouldn't exist, or this wouldn't happen without the changing mediums, particularly the internet and podcasting and YouTube and all that other stuff that we have. And so it's completely opened up the game. On the topic of newspapers, though, I understand people lamenting losing this old system, or this old way of reading the paper, but that's where everyone is for the most part, right? People are on their phones, they're on their computer. And so this was an eventuality that we would go all digital, just as we're going largely digital with books as well. And of course, we do still have our hard copies of books, but for the most part, that's where the trend is. And so I get people lamenting it, but I'm more concerned about, how many people do you have on staff? What is the base of reporters look like? What does the columnists look like? Like, those are the areas where I'm a little more sensitive or concerned, as opposed to like, which medium are you on?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, there's trade-offs, right? Like the more digital you go, obviously, the more accessible you are, the easier you are to use. I mean, people can transport. It feels almost silly to like, you're taking your loonie and like plugging the newspaper box and opening it up and then everybody's got to be like, are you honest or not? Like, are you going to take 2 copies of the paper? Are you going to take just one? I mean, remember people back in the day that like disagreed with what they were reading in the paper? They'd like pick up after their dogs on the dog walk and then open the newspaper box and deposit the dog's deposit in the newspaper box.
Thing?
Oh, it was a thing. Man, it was a thing. I wasn't part of it. Boy, I'm open.
You know what that is?
I love talking to you. What?
Ryan, you know what that is? That's the original shit posting.
It is the original shit posting, literally. But even like back in the, I'm not making light of this. It's not funny. It was actually a nightmare for all involved. But when Herald employees, Calgary Herald employees striked, it was the largest media strike in Canadian history at the time, and I think it still is. And I was a non-union position, so I was in a really tough. I mean, it was an easy decision, but a tough spot very early in my career because I sort of figured, the ramification. I put it this way: I did not consider crossing the picket line. But I wasn't union, so I wasn't going to strike because it didn't, and it ultimately was a real nightmare that ended up with me resigning, and it was a really tough situation. But I remember some of the people that were being called into work, or some of the people that were crossing the picket line, were having the Calgary Herald newspaper boxes, in at least one circumstance, actually thrown through like bay windows, front windows in their house. I mean, like the newspaper boxes were being used as intimidation, and it was wild stuff, man, back in the day. But I mean, just a completely different era, to say the least. I'd be curious with regards to subscribers of print media, talking like actual physical newspapers. You take a bit of a risk. Obviously, the financial implications of continuing to produce it are huge. Like, there's the actual printing costs. There's the transportation costs of getting them out. There's at every level, right? Up to like, little Sally, the newspaper delivery girl that's like rolling them up with elastics and throwing them at the front doors. It all costs. And obviously this would be a cost-cutting measure. But I'd be curious to see what the retention rate is. Once you start talking, people that are maybe a little bit less inclined to plunge in on technology, the people that don't have the tablets, the smartphones, these people do exist. And I'd be curious to know, like the execs around the boardroom table, when you're saying we're going all digital, we're pulling print, what percent of subscribers, what percentage they'd retain, and how many people they might lose. It'd be interesting to know.
Yeah, I wonder if they've taken other case studies or other examples in terms of that, being able to transfer over those subscribers to digital and what that looks like. It is a process, right? And so anytime you ask a consumer to go out of their way to do something, you're going to lose folks along the way, and not necessarily because they don't like the product, but because they're lazy. Like it's just an ask of the consumer of like, oh, if you really want this, go online and set this up. And I think a lot of people just might let it fall by the wayside. So it will be interesting to see. And again, I just hope the best for the industry in general, whether it is quote unquote mainstream media or independent media. Like, I think all media is good as long as it's coming from a place of good intention and honesty and diversity of thought and folks that can express themselves and deliver news and connect with people.
Are you seeing that? Like with regards to diversity of thought, I had a very interesting debate just last night with a guy. I won't say who he is because I'm not trying to pick a fight, but he's very politically connected on the conservative side. And we were having a wonderful conversation, but we were talking about granting access to interviews. In particular, to pull back the curtain a little bit, he was talking about the Jason Kenney era in Alberta politics and how for some members of the media, including myself, it was a tough slog. It was difficult because he wouldn't grant interviews. He held grudges. There was a lot of malice involved behind the scenes. His staff was vindictive. I mean, these are just facts, and I'll go to the wall with actual stories if anybody wants to challenge me on that. But that's not the point. I was talking about a return to decency, and like Alberta Premier Danielle Smith or not, she'll talk to anybody. Not anybody, maybe, and I'm saying this is.
She'll talk to you.
She'll talk to me. She sat in the studio, our first show in the new studio, and I appreciate that. I appreciate people that may not agree with you 100% of the time, but that's not a prerequisite to an interview. That's not the point. But we started talking about. I said to him, that's what I respect the most when there's Democrats on Fox or when there's Republicans on CNN. And as I'm saying it, I'm also going, gosh, that sucks, doesn't it? That I'm sitting here. It's just assumed, all of us around this table having this conversation, that there's the Republican cable outlet and the Democrats cable outlet, and I really lament that. But we've got a similar sort of a vibe in Canada, but a bit less subtle. What's your assessment of where it's at with regards to diversity of thought?
So there's a couple of things here, and I think the first that I want to emphasize is that culturally we're a little behind the Americans. They're already kind of there, but we're moving towards this realm of you can't even talk or chat with people that are politically different than you. And I think that is a very concerning trend. I know growing up, my parents loved to host dinner parties, go to dinner parties. And I remember them and their friends would disagree about politics a lot. And yet they were still friends, and it would be very heated, fun conversations. And I lament those days that we could have that. And unfortunately, with things like Twitter, which again, Twitter comes with its pros and its cons, but with Twitter, it does try to divide us into these camps and tribes. And I don't know how productive that is. And I worry just on a cultural level, on a personal level, what that means that, if you talk to this person or if you're friends with this person, you can't be a true progressive or you can't be a true conservative. And I think that that's really silly.
It's ridiculous.
It's so silly. And when we talk about media and diversity of thought, I think some conservatives have a real gripe. How valid it is, I don't know. I haven't really studied the think pieces.
Mo, I don't know if it's just conservatives. As a matter of fact, I guarantee it's not just conservatives because
it's not because
like a show like ours, what I hear from the left all the time is people ask, why are you platforming people? And there's some validity if someone will say, I don't bring on some guy that's got some some blog or some vlog out of his basement talking about white supremacy and then I bring him on and pick his brain about white supremacy. No, I get that, but we have the premier in and people say, why are you platforming the premier? Like, give me a break. That
is very silly. When I say diversity of thought, what I mean is, the progressives or the left, they also have legitimate gripes that sometimes the news media or opinion media leans corporate, right? It leans towards
100%.
Corporate. And I think that there's a legitimate gripe that way. And so when we talk about diversity of thought, we're absolutely not perfect. And I think that there are absolutely underrepresented voices. And it's, I had a tweet do well this week about saying, we lack racial representation, particularly in our national opinionists. And it's all white. And I say, look at the roll call of columnists at the Globe and Mail or at the National Post. And like, it's just not representative of certainly of urban areas, but the country as a whole. And so when it comes to diversity of thought, we can carve it out a lot of different ways. Obviously, do we include, as you just noted, like, do we include people who are complete, vaccine deniers and telling you that this is going to kill you and all that stuff? Like, you probably, we probably exclude those people. We probably exclude straight up white supremacists. Like, there's certain exclusions that we ultimately make because time and space is finite, but and we do have to make moral judgments on who we platform and who we don't. But I think striving for a diversity of thought and diversity of opinions is important regardless of where you stand in the political spectrum.
Let me ask you this in closing. Ivan Provorov, Philadelphia Flyers defenseman, wouldn't skate and warm up the other night because it was Pride night. He says it goes against his Russian Orthodox beliefs. What do you make of the story? What is the appropriate response from the Philadelphia Flyers and the National Hockey League? And what do you think writ large people should be talking about with this story?
Again, if the NHL wants to pursue these type of gestures, it has to be wary that there are going to be a minority of players that are not comfortable with it. But again, if you're an employee and your employer wants you to wear a certain dress code or a certain uniform or whatever, you end up doing it. And so I think Ivan's in the wrong. I think he should be, not necessarily canceled, but he should have some sort of consequence from the team or from the league. Because ultimately you're not making a political statement, you're wearing a jersey, right? And it's a rainbow colored jersey and it's not a big deal. And for him to come out and say he's not comfortable with it, well, so I'm sorry, your league, your employer has said that they stand for these values. And as someone taking money from those organizations, I think you have an obligation to go along with it. Now, So some people will say, oh, well, what if it was something that I disagreed with, right? Would you be taking a moral stance? Sure. But then you also deal with the consequences of that, right? Yeah. So again, I'm not out for his full cancellation, but understanding that there are consequences for when you go against an employer's request, I think is key in understanding this issue.
I appreciate you picking up on the employer obligation, the team member, the teammate angle on this. I do think it's nuanced. I think that there's a lot to consider here. I think obviously it was unfortunate what it did to that night, but also, sometimes like these silver linings, Mo, where an incident will happen that yes, is unfortunate. It's not best case scenario, but it gets everybody talking and it forces people to think about things that, you may have your gut, and I'm talking even about myself. You got your gut instinct, your gut reaction, you know what you think right away, and then you consider other thoughts and opinions, and you say, like, what are the ramifications of this? What are the bigger pictures? What should we all be thinking about? And that's always a positive exercise. You know what I mean? It's so good to see your face, my man. And I'm going to say, Happy New Year. Thanks for making time for us, Mo. Everybody should follow you on Twitter. Everybody should check out. This is VANCOLOUR on CHEK. You're doing an absolutely amazing job there. Congratulations. We're really proud of you. CHEKnews.ca.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Take care. Happy New Year.
All right, buddy. And welcome back from Hawaii. Have you ever been to Maui? You ever been to the beautiful island of Maui?
No, that is the next destination. My wife is pretty set on going to Hawaii next. So
you guys are
where we're gonna go.
I mean, there's all everyone can make the argument for like the Big Island, or everyone's got their what is it, Molokai? Like there's all these destinations there, but Maui to me is just like one of the greatest places on planet Earth. Coming up in just a second, we're going to talk to an addictions medicine specialist out of Arizona, the Mayo Clinic. The opioid crisis is the other health crisis, the other epidemic outside of COVID-19, and it's killing Canadians, Americans, and people around the world at a rate that is absolutely unacceptable. Dr. Geyer's got a new book out and believes that she may have found the solution to this. These conversations are presented by sponsors like our amazing friends at California Closets. You think of California Closets, as the name would suggest, they can help you get organized. They can transform your living space. Maybe a nice walk-in, finally get your life organized. But there's so much more than that. They do workspaces. They do storage areas. And of course, they do totally custom garage storage cabinets. It's the workhorse of the home, your garage. Why not make it work a little harder for you? Custom designed garage cabinetry, drawers, shelves, specialty wall storage racks create a purposeful room for storing garden and snow sports equipment, keepsakes, even holiday decorations. Transform your living space, including your garage, with a free consultation starting today at californiaclosets.ca. Hey, at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, we're sounding the alarm, my friends, because you've only got 12 more days. 12 more days to pick up 12 dilly bars or 12 DQ sandwiches. Here's the thing. You're only going to pay for 6 because it's buy one, get one free. The boxes of dilly bars and DQ sandwiches at the Dairy Queens in Palisades, Namao, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. Don't forget, they've got the dairy-free dilly bars as well, which are marvelous. And a big shout out to these Dairy Queens, these family-owned locations. They're going to be out at the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic, serving up burgers and ice cream treats. That's Saturday, February 4th. Check out ryanjesperson.com events for details on that. If you're thinking of transforming your living space, that's a priority for you this coming summer, whether it's an anniversary party you got coming up, maybe a special milestone birthday, or maybe you're just sick of looking at this long rows of sod and boring trees that aren't growing and they're going to take forever and you need some inspiration. Mike and his team at Eden Landscaping have earned referrals and return business from clients who are gobsmacked, I tell you, gobsmacked by the work that they do. And they're a full-service shop, so you're not hiring landscape architects. You're not subcontracting out to trades. They show up, they start the job from design all the way through, and they don't leave until you're satisfied. You can contact them today. Get the permits pulled. Get the construction materials ordered now so there's no delays in the summer. Eden Landscaping is online at landscapeedmonton.ca. And a big shout out to our friends at Friesen Brothers. Johnny, I know that, the love of your life may be here in the show, so you may not want to reveal it, but do you have a Valentine's Day plan yet?
I do. It's a secret plan.
Attaboy.
Stop it.
Well, then I will ask no further questions, but Friesen Brothers wants us to let you know that they've got Valentine's Day charcuterie boards. You can totally customize them, ready for pickup leading up to the big day. We're giving you lots of advance notice. They've got the meat and cheese one, the classic charcuterie, and then they have a fabulous dessert charcuterie board available as well. I say why pick and choose? Go with both of them. You can learn more and order online at friesen.com. Well, I probably don't have to tell you that the opioid crisis is absolutely out of control. An unacceptable number of people are dying by drug poisoning every day across the country and around the world, including the United States, where every 8 minutes somebody dies of an overdose. Dr. Holly Geyer is an addictions medicine specialist operating out of the Mayo Clinic in Arizona. Her new book, Ending the Crisis, a solution, we hope, to touching on and adequately addressing opioid addiction, drug poisoning, and opioid use. Dr. Geyer joining us from Arizona this morning. Thanks so much, and welcome to Real Talk up here in Canada. It's nice to see your face.
Thank you so much. What a privilege to be with you today.
Well, we've been doing some digging into the work that you do and trying to better understand, obviously approaches that have been productive here. We're talking about matters of life and death. What brought you, Dr. Geyer, into addictions medicine? What drew you into this field?
Every part of us has a very personal experience with the opioid epidemic, and I grew up in this world. My parents started a drug treatment program in Minnesota, and I spent my younger years there working in different aspects, non-clinical mostly, until I entered the world of medicine. And, mental health has really been an arena that's owned the concept of addiction for so long. But the more I got into the world of medicine, the more I realized we as physicians own a huge part of this problem as well. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to bring the opioid epidemic into the forefront of America and Canada's viewpoint, to understand how it is such a complex disorder that we can all deal with collectively as a society.
Can you Let's sort of like set the tone. Let's pour the foundation here for the conversation just so we can understand it. Obviously, don't have to tell you that healthcare delivery systems are a little bit different in Canada and the U.S., but virtually every Canadian hears of the Mayo Clinic. I mean, when I think of somebody, including people that, they'll call it like health tourism or medical tourism, which isn't always a good thing, obviously, but sometimes people with means or people in really dire circumstances will be heading south of the border to get treatment for something. And when you hear they're going to the Mayo Clinic, you go, okay, they're like pulling out all the stops. This is serious business. Can you give us a sense of what the Mayo Clinic's all about and the work that you're doing there so we can better understand your perspective?
Absolutely. Mayo's medical system is really built on a singular principle. The expectations and the needs of the patients are really at the forefront of how we offer treatment, and we keep them at the center of holistic care. That's one of the things that led us as an organization to initiate an opioid stewardship program a number of years ago, when we recognized that we're so frequently trying to target patient expectations as the only thing we're going after, realizing it's causing complications. And what's at the best interest of that patient may not necessarily be what they think they need. That's one of the reasons we wrote this book, is to empower patients and their loved ones to really understand what is truly in their best interest along the course of a pain-related process, and how to deal with addiction or opioid-related problems when they arise.
One of the interesting things about your book is that there's not a lot, thanks to your team, by the way, for passing it along ahead of time. It's not a lot about opioids themselves, actually, right? It's more around the contributing factors to this crisis. Can you explain for people that haven't yet read the book?
Absolutely. In fact, we think that America's focus on opioids as the problem is the problem. The reality is that as we've demonized this drug class, what we've forgotten are the people impacted by them. What's truly the big issue to face is the misuse of opioids and our misunderstandings of them. Opioids are probably one of the greatest drugs ever invented on the planet, or at least utilized. And, when used in the right patient for the right reason, the right length and dose, they're one of medicine's greatest marvels. When used outside those parameters, they lead to statistics.
I've got a friend that's waiting for a surgery. He's an avid skier. He's in his early 50s, and he's got a knee issue it's really gnarly. 5 surgeries already, and he's in line, I guess, or the next step is an inevitable knee replacement. I was lucky enough to be talking to him up on the mountain just a few days ago, and I asked him how he's doing, and he said, in paraphrasing, essentially he's living in so much pain right now, Holly, because he's afraid, he's concerned to get onto opioids. He's concerned about the pain management plan that he's been presented with because he sees stories around him, and he's concerned about what might happen. You must hear these stories a million times, and sometimes probably pretty far down the road of somebody that's dealing with an addiction.
Oh, it's horrible. You know what? We call it the opioid epidemic, but the reality is that there's 2 dual endemics here. We've got the pain crisis epidemic in America, as well as the opioid epidemic. And because of all the miscommunications about this drug class, I treat little old patients all the time who are scared to death, even near end of life, with bad advancing cancers, who won't touch an opioid because they're afraid of becoming addicted. And it's that misunderstanding that's leading to these pain crises and a suffering that doesn't need to take place. And of course, there's the other side of the coin. People who look for a pill at any expense, right, to alleviate pain because they want to continue daily activities without using pain as what it's supposed to be, right? A protective, preventative type of bodily resource to help us set limitations so we heal. And so you've got these 2 problems at once, and that's what this book addresses. The first half is about how to use opioids safely. If you're given them, walk into that doctor's office empowered with the information to have an educated conversation. I can tell you, there is no reason in 2023 that we as physicians should be the only ones privileged with the information on how to know how to use these drugs safely. That's your information. And when we don't give it to you, you overdose.
What are some of the big, I know that you're going to hesitate. I want to be clear. We'll say to people like, this is not medical advice. Obviously, you want to talk to your own doctor. You want to talk. Everybody's situation is different. Let's get all the caveats out there. But what are some common mistakes or misunderstandings? Where does the lack of information really play out in cases that you see? I mean, if we want the public to be better educated, what are a couple of key things that they need to know about opioids?
that opioids aren't always the answer. We had done a large national study in America about 4 years ago, and it showed that 79% of the general public believed that the appropriate indication for opioids is for chronic pain. And the answer couldn't be more of the opposite. In fact, it offers almost no benefits in that population. Other things are when to use opioids in conjunction with other therapies. Have that conversation. We're not titrating opioids to be complete pain relievers. The goal should be functionality. So talk to your doctor about what other agents you could use to make sure that you're staying safe while on them and minimizing the amount of opioids you needed in order to achieve those goals. And then, of course, how to dispose of them and what to do with leftovers.
Yeah, Doctor, we've in our neck of the woods in the province of Alberta, we're just up from Montana. There's a lot of talk right now because, of course, all of this, there's a lot of politics involved in medicine, and I know that's the case everywhere, obviously. But we've had concurrent governments. We've had different governments over the past 6 years or so that have had very different approaches to managing the opioid epidemic. We had a government that's more of a progressive government, you might describe it, from 2015 to 2019 that was open to, I think, exploring different harm reduction measures. We saw a rise in resources around supervised consumption, so-called supervised injection sites, and then around 2019, a more conservative government took over, defunded a lot of those harm reduction sites, including supervised consumption, but they've dumped a ton of money into addictions counseling and detox centers. And it's hard to argue against either. I think in a perfect world, we would see resources for both. But in your assessment, what works and what solutions are just not working?
I think the most important solution that we could offer people is exactly what we've done with this book. I would venture to say that the average person out there this morning listening to this podcast hasn't touched a hot stove, right? And there's a reason for it. You learn very early on in life that doing so will lead to consequences. But what we're not doing in America is providing the information to every single person before they even touch an opioid on what the risks and the benefits are. And that's why we want to educate the public broadly on this drug class so that we can get rid of those myths. For those struggling with opioid-related complications, primarily addiction, we know there's a host of problems out there and a host of responses, many of which came out of those 2016 CDC guidelines. Some have worked, some haven't. But I can tell you that any opportunity to get someone the chance to get into a treatment program, which often takes place at these harm reduction locations, is a good thing. And when it's done right, the data shows that it does get people into the treatment they need. Of course, comprehensive counseling and medications for opioid use disorder are a part of that plan. And we as an organization very much agree with any effort that averts a crisis waiting to happen.
I've often lamented the fact that sometimes you have to say in talk radio or in podcasting, in public-facing media, some things that come across as pretty calloused to get some people to care about an issue. And we catch ourselves, or we'll hear people say something like, the overdose crisis isn't just impacting the homeless population. There are people overdosing in the suburbs, as though that's what it takes, or that's what it needs to take for people to care about this. But I think it reiterates the fact that there's a huge amount of stigma attached to this issue. And I have to believe that that's part of the reason why maybe some people don't see it as a full-blown crisis. Am I onto something?
You've nailed it. We look at addiction from the medical community's perspective as a medical disorder. This is billable, it's diagnosable, and quite frankly, it's treatable, which is so unfortunate considering less than 10% of people struggling with addiction and opioids never get the treatment they need. And so I think understanding what that biology is that drives it, people will really revolutionize how they view the disorder. It's essentially a diabetes of the brain, a change in the chemical structure and the wiring. And that's treatable if we can get them to the treatment they need.
Who did you write the book for?
Family members, loved ones, and patients. We wrote it for anyone who might, in the course of their existence, touch an opioid. And by the way, in 2015, the data shows that 1 out of every 3 adults in America was on an opioid. So there's a lot of room for this education.
Wow. Dr. Holly Geyer is doing amazing work at the Mayo Clinic out of Arizona. You're the director of physicians there as well, I should mention. And congratulations on your new book, Ending the Crisis, the Mayo Clinic's Guide to Opioid Addiction and Safe Opioid Use. We appreciate you making time for us today, Doctor. Thanks for it.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. I know that this is these conversations, man. We check out the live chat. I don't know if you were in there. Like, we mentioned Dr. Bradley Martin all the time because he's become just a wonderful friend of the show. But he also, I feel like we have kind of an unofficial medical advisor that joins on the live stream. The guy's a physician out of Hinton, and he says, opioids after orthopedic surgeries are a massive issue that nobody discusses. He says it's an unbelievable problem, and the main issue is that the medical community, says Dr. Martin, believed that opioids were safe, as essentially solutions, right, for chronic pain until about 10 or 15 years ago. And so you get somebody, you hear the story a million times. I'm talking about my buddy, waiting on this knee surgery. Yeah. And watching him walk, we have shredded together on the mountain. It's
horrible,
before.
Isn't it?
He can barely walk right now, but he doesn't want to get on opioid,
Yeah. I haven't brought it up either, but my wife is dealing with a right knee problem. She has for like 4 or 5 years, and about 5 years ago, she went to a doctor, and they said, hey, you can try therapy, massage, cannabis, CBD, or we can do the surgery now. And she's been doing, the CBD. She's been trying everything, but the same thing. She doesn't want to try an opioid because of all these documentaries and exposés and movies that have come out kind of demonizing it when, like the doctor said, these are really good drugs. They help people a lot, but she's the same way. She refuses to do it. So this morning when we're driving to work, we're literally commuting and she's in terrible pain. She stops. She's driving. She can't drive. She can't even drive. Leave her knee in that position.
You're talking about just regular, everyday
walking, going
stuff.
up the stairs, and so I had to drive to work. But it's the same thing. Now she's considering getting the surgery because the pain is so bad. But she's been going through 4 years of incredible pain in that time, right?
Huh. My thoughts are with real talkers like Dorothy, who's watching us live this morning. She says our family lost my sister in 2021 due to addiction. Dorothy, I'm so sorry to hear it. She says my parents were both, so-called clean and sober for 40 plus years. Tracy says that she worked with people that, with addiction issues, found that in some circumstances, folks had to hit rock bottom. Sometimes at the expense of others before they wanted help. And even that is supercharged language. I understand people are coming at this from a position of empathy and endeavoring to understand. Some of you have worked in the field. My brother works in the field. You know that. Kyle's been on the show before. Works at Insight, at the supervised consumption site on East Hastings in Vancouver. So this is front end. My father was a physician for 45 years, had a remarkable career. And so these are conversations around the family dinner table that we have, and about how doctors' prescribing practices have changed and how everybody's had to level up and learn and understand more. Tony says, my mom's GP, general practitioner, family doctor, prescribed OxyContin for her leg pain. Tony says, I lost my mind. She says, I told him this was criminal of him to do that. All she needed was a massage. Right? These sometimes these quick fixes, or but I do think, and I hope, because this has been prominent. Even colleges of physicians and surgeons across the country have talked about prescribing practices and really pushing toward an absolute mind shift, a habit shift, where I think a lot of times you'll hear people's stories. Were you aware? He's talked about it publicly. It's not a secret. The chief of staff to Alberta's premier was a number of years ago living on the streets, addicted to booze and coke and his recovery from that. It's just one example. I admire people that are willing to go public and tell their stories and talk about their recovery. We welcome your comments anytime to talk@ryanjesperson.com. You can send us an email using your name. You can request anonymity if that makes you more comfortable to share your personal stories. We want to make sure that we reflect real life. We want to reflect what people are actually dealing with. And we sure appreciate the candid nature that a lot of you bring to the table when you share your stories with us. I want to put something silly on your radar in just a second. But before we do, let's make sure that we recognize the sponsors that keep this show rolling. And that includes the amazing team at Kubi Renewable Energy. They're Western Canada's #1 solar installers. We learned this just a month ago or so. 1 in 5 solar installations done in Western Canada are done by Kubi Renewable Energy. How amazing is that? A solar power system these days, I want to throw some numbers at you, Real Talkers, generates about 10,000 kilowatts per year. When you talk about how much, carbon Could your solar energy system offset? You want to decrease, you want to lessen your carbon footprint? You know that the average solar power system will save over 170 tons of carbon over its lifetime. That's amazing, right? You know, so in a province like ours, when cold snaps are common during the winter, the average home is going to ramp up its natural gas use by 40%. Electricity use by, on average, about 8% for every 10-degree drop below zero. You can sell carbon credits that you earn with your solar power system, actually make money and feel better about the footprint you're leaving on planet Earth. Kubi Energy can make this happen for you. And you can all start today. Get that ball rolling with a free quote at kubienergy.ca. So you've got your solar power system up on the roof, and what next? Well, you want to go to parkpower.ca for a couple of reasons. Number one, you know, you might need your backup. Of course, you're still probably going to use some natural gas. Who doesn't need internet? They do all three: electricity, natural gas, and internet, and they offer Alberta's best deal when it comes to buying back excess energy. Your system's giving you more juice than you need in the summer months. Park Power is going to pay you in some circumstances 4 or 5 times what the big guys will. It is just another reason why it makes sense to bring your business to your friendly local utilities provider. Don't forget the promo code REALTALK23 knocks $50 off your bill times 3 if you bundle electricity, natural gas, and internet. Who doesn't want to save $150? The promo code REALTALK23 at parkpower.ca. And a big shout out to our friends at Local Environmental Services. We got a bit of a pile of emails for Trash Talk tomorrow, but there's always room for more. You can send us your rant, your rave, your gripe, whatever you need that's grinding your gears to blast out to everybody else. Shoot us an email, Trash Talk, presented by Local Environmental Services. You can view their services online at localenvironmental.ca. If you're living in the Edmonton area, Whitecourt area, Regina and area, if you're on the prairies, take your business, keep it local, save money, and actually have real-life humans answer the phone at Local Environmental Services.
Do you want to get serious before you get silly?
Sure.
Breaking news just 12 minutes ago. Alec Baldwin is going to be charged in that fatal shooting. Yeah, so involuntary manslaughter. The Santa Fe district attorney just brought charges against him and the film's armorer, which was the woman, Hannah Goretti, I believe, who loaded the gun with what she thought was blanks, and I guess they weren't blanks, or I don't know what the actual specifics are. If you want to pull up the story there, we can just throw it up for people, but yeah.
Wow.
So he was fighting that for a while, right? Because it was presumed to be an accident, but
yeah.
I guess things have changed.
Well, he went on the record. That was the film set Rust, and he was one of the film's producers as well as its star. So I'm just seeing this for the very first time right now. Halyna Hutchins was killed on that film set when he fired a prop gun. This was back in October of 2021 in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Yeah, you remember, and neither of them have commented on the charges at this point. You remember, though, Alec Baldwin in what I thought was, gosh, I mean, this is a tough spot for everybody. You imagine you're the person that loaded that firearm. I mean, you'd never forgive yourself. Alec Baldwin will never forgive himself. There's a family that is bereaved and thousands of people. When somebody dies, sorry to state the obvious here, we just talked about opioid deaths and drug poisonings. Like the ripple effect of someone's death can touch thousands of people. But you think of somebody that would have been involved in a horrific accident like this, and then to be charged. I'd be curious to know what prosecutors reviewed to give them the inclination.
Must be
to
something
actually
substantial,
lay
right?
charges.
Because I think what happened was, if I'm correct, is that at the time he fired the gun, he wasn't supposed to be. Like, they weren't filming.
Okay.
Or he was doing something. So it was, So. But this stuff happens, like Brandon Lee. That's how Brandon Lee died, right? On set as well.
Yeah.
Blanks that were not blanks in a gun. So
I heard a story. I don't have the information in front of me, so I'll keep it vague because I don't want to screw it up. But I heard a story a while ago about 2 8-year-old girls that their dads, one of them, they were best friends, and one of the girls' dads, for whatever reason, the firearm was not stored securely. It was stored loaded, which is just I mean, I know that we're going to get, if you get gun people, and I'm not using that as a pejorative, like if you gun enthusiasts, and fill your boots. Like, I'm not inherently against guns. I'm nervous around guns. Guns aren't my thing. But we've had some amazing conversations on the show about gun laws and gun legislation and gun culture. But you'll get like the hardcore gun enthusiasts, and all of them will bang the table like when they hear stories like that about responsible gun transport, responsible gun storage, responsible gun ownership, with the guns locked up in a locker and the ammunition stored securely somewhere else. And to hear these stories of like a loaded gun being left accessible to kids. I mean, people that have, the loaded handgun in the night table, dresser drawer kind of idea, just absolutely horrific. But Alec Baldwin was doing interviews shortly. He did at least one or two because he was on the record
I
like
felt
within
for him.
within a
he
couple of
seemed
days.
pretty upset.
Well,
right?
of course you're upset, but he was also very adamant, as you would be. But I wonder if that was on the advice of attorneys or not. He was very adamant, saying basically like he didn't spell it out, but he basically was like, "This was not my fault," which is also a way of saying this is someone's fault.
Yeah. And if he fired it at a time he wasn't supposed to be, because blanks can still kill people. I don't think people know this. I'm not a gun expert, but like those dense metals, little shards of them from blanks can still come off and injure people. So that's, I guess, what happened in this circumstance. It's just a bad situation, but involuntary manslaughter is looking like what the charge will be.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. I'll bring the dumb shit to the table tomorrow. I was going to talk.
We
Or should we balance out the heavy with some light?
Well, we got some time
to
Go
wrap.
ahead.
I mean, it's just kind of, we always got time. We can do whatever we want. But did you see in our home city of Edmonton, have you seen that there's a contest right now to name these snowplows?
I've seen some of them already on plows today. Yeah.
Okay, so you don't have to live in Edmonton to find this amusing. Anna Junker is a journalist who does an amazing job in Edmonton. I'm a big fan of hers. She reports for the Edmonton Journal, Edmonton Sun, and they have chosen the 15 names for new snowplows in Edmonton, or at least, I don't know if they're new, but they're getting named. Of course, Amersleet Snowhee.
That's a great one.
Referencing Edmonton Mayor Amarjeet Sohi, obviously. The Blizzard of Oz. The Blizzard Wizard. I thought it was pretty good. Connor McBladed.
Amazing.
Connor McBladed is very good. Control, Salt, Delete.
That's a great one, too.
Fast and Furious. Of course you've got Plowy McPlowface. That's just a given. Bodie McBoatface, I think, was the origin of that trend. My personal favorite is the Big Leplowski.
I love that one.
The Big Leplowski.
I heard Connor on the radio this morning talking about it, and they said, "Hey, what do you think of the snowplow named after you?" He's like, "Well, I think it's pretty fun. Edmontonians take their hockey seriously. They take winter seriously." So, but how did Leon Dry Sidewalk not get in there? Come on. Am I wrong? That's
John
a great
Hicks.
one. Hello.
Did you just come up with that, or are you stealing it from someone?
Boom.
You got to tweet that right now. You can let us know what you would have named the snowplow if you didn't hear it. There's Mr. Plow, obviously an awesome Simpsons reference. Peter Parka is pretty good. Nice Spider-Man reference there. Plowosaurus Rex. How about this? Inuk dialect. Is it Kanik? Which is the word for snowfall. There, you learned something today on the show. I hope you learn something every 5 minutes here on the show. I would tell you at this point, typically, as we wrap, who's coming up on the show tomorrow. But you want a real peek behind the curtain?
We don't know.
We have no idea. We don't know who's going to be on the show tomorrow. But that just means that we're going to be back at it between now and then, furiously endeavoring to bring you the news of the day. But in all seriousness, the stuff you care about. You know, a great way to make sure that that's reflected here? Be in touch with us. Let us know who you'd love to hear from right here on Real Talk.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.